On to the report today from the competition watchdog, the ACCC, and it really is interesting because it turns out that Tony Abbott was right about our electricity prices. Turns out that the people attacking him were wrong. Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, Labor, journalists, the whole show. For months, Tony Abbott has said global warming policies and things like the Paris Agreement are hurting Australians. And he said that the government now needs to buy or build or subsidise a new big electricity plant, and a coal one at that, cheap, reliable. But the Prime Minister kept saying no.
Do you rule out funding any further coal-fired power stations?
Well, we have no plans to do so, Lee.
Now, this ACCC report today says there are many reasons why power prices are soaring, and green schemes are sure one of them. The report criticises the renewable energy target that forces us to use unreliable wind and solar power. ACCC boss Rod Sims said the subsidies for solar panels were also hurting us.
Firstly, those previously high, very high premium feed-in tariffs, which were excessively generous, should be funded by governments, not by the people who don't have the solar panels. And secondly, we're suggesting getting rid of the continuing subsidy that's still there for small-scale solar on people's roofs. It's just a subsidy that's not needed anymore.
Most importantly, and interestingly, the ACCC said to really cut prices, the government should now subsidise investors building new, big, reliable, 24 hours a day, power generators by guaranteeing to buy their electricity. The government buy their electricity and for no more than $50 per megawatt hour, about half of what you now regularly see in South Australia. And that kind of price is a job that can only really be done now by coal, maybe gas. Well, of course, it wasn't just Tony Abbott that was calling for government to subsidise new generators and new coal generators. It was people like Craig Kelly, chairman of the government's Environment and Energy Committee, who joins me now. Craig Kelly, thank you so much for your time. What does this report do? Do you think it vindicates what you've been arguing, what the Nationals have been arguing, what Tony Abbott's been arguing, that the government does now have to subsidise or help build in some way power stations and almost certainly coal ones?
Look, Andrew, I think that you are right, and a few of us that have argued the case that we need the government to underwrite major baseload power infrastructure in this nation today have been vindicated by the ACCC's report. But I'd say it's not a point of subsidising it. The reason that there's hundreds, if not over 1,000 coal-fired power units or stations, however you want to define them, being built in over 50 countries around the world, is because they've done the sums and they've worked out that coal is the cheapest way to generate electricity for their nation. Now, the reason that's not happening here is because of the political risk. Investors look at the possibility of a Labor Greens government sometime in the next, who knows, 12 months, 10, 15 years, pulling the rug out from underneath them. So that's why the investment is not occurring in Australia. And that's why the way we need to fix this problem is to get the government to underwrite on a long-term basis baseload generation to replace those coal-fired power stations that have closed, the Hazelwoods, the Northern Power Station in South Australia, and those coal-fired power stations that will close in the rest of the decade to come.
Of course, this ACCC report doesn't go far enough because that wasn't part of its remit. One of the reasons, of course, that coal-fired power generation is not a great investment now is that governments keep loading up these power stations with the responsibility to get rid of their carbon dioxide emissions, which are blamed for a dangerous global warming we don't actually see at the moment, and we certainly don't feel. Now, do you wish that the ACCC, or maybe a future report, looks at whether these carbon dioxide measures are ever really needed?
Well, Andrew, if we go down the track of the Heli coal plants, which are the high efficiency, low emissions, we could actually get greater emissions reductions in our CO2 for per dollar than we would investing in or malinvestment, I'd say, in wind farms and solar farms. But we've got to make a decision also, Andrew, the track that we go down. We've got to say what's more important in Australia. Is it meeting those Paris targets, or is it getting prices low for pensioners so they can afford to turn their electricity on in a cold winter? And I think when you boil it down to that, I'll always put pensioners and prices before the Paris targets.
Yes, when we see things like a Wollongong University survey saying poor pensioners were too scared to turn on the heating because of the cost. I mean, this is just nuts in a country like this. Before, green activists start swarming on me like they've been trying to do on the blog today, saying, oh, you're wrong, you're wrong. The report, the ACCC report, doesn't say subsidise coal-fired power stations. It just says generators, technology neutral. The $50 a megawatt price that the government is told to buy from these stations, which kind of power generation capacity can actually do that? Cheap, reliable power like that?
Well, Andrew, it's not a matter of just generating the electricity. You've got to generate it on a base load. You've got to be able to generate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 years of the year. It's no point having intermittent sources of generation that can generate for 10 minutes and then the wind goes away or the sun goes behind a cloud and the generation turns off. Now, the only way you can get anywhere near that $50 a megawatt hour for base load generation is in coal. We see that in Japan. They are getting close to that $50 mark, and that's paying a premium. Importing coal from Australia, loading it on a ship, shipping it all the way to Japan, unloading it off a ship, taking it to the coal-fired power station there. They're paying a premium and they're getting close to that $50. So if we've got that coal in our backyard, we've got the infrastructure already in place. I believe that we look at some of the studies that have been done, we can get very close to that $50 a megawatt hour for new coal generation. And there's nothing else, Andrew, that can get anywhere near that when it comes to supplying baseload, fully dispatchable power on a 24/7 basis.
Subsidised coal. Now, Craig, the Prime Minister has now said he will look at that proposal. I wonder if it's now going to be a breakthrough, or am I being too optimistic? Because the Prime Minister did once suggest, when Tony Abbott raised it, not the ACCC, and when you raised it, that this was a socialist idea. What do you think he will say now?
Well, look, Andrew, I think now the ACCC has said this. I've been talking about this for several years now, and that position has been painted as a bit of an outsider, a bit of an extreme position. Today, it is middle ground. To have the ACCC, the respected ACCC, come out and make that recommendation. Baseload coal generation is now going mainstream, that we need to do this. So I'm hopeful that with that ACCC's report today, the government will pick up those recommendations, we'll put them in the neg. And this is where the real test comes in. To get this through the Senate, we need the support of the Australian Labor Party. The Australian Labor Party have to make up their mind. They still want to go on this green frolic that has been criticised by the ACCC, or do they want to get behind the recommendations that the ACCC has made?
Craig Kelly, thank you so much indeed for your time and for your constant pushing on this very, very important issue for our future. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Andrew.
After the break, Rowan Dean, and I have to say it's time to defend Mark Latham. And also, for the first time, a New South Wales court has punished a Muslim for refusing to stand for the judge.